Hello. And on this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club, we're going to be looking again at building multi-step lead forms in Ninja Forms, which is a plugin for WordPress. I'm going to show you the benefits of using Ninja Forms and how and why multi-step lead forms might help be a good funnel for your sales. I'm also going to show you how to do it with a little walkthrough as well. So enjoy. So I'm just going to run through some form examples. I like setting the scene and just talking about the different ways that we can use forms online. First one, we've got a relatively simple one here. This is on Eclipse, one of our clients. This is a simple callback form, I'd call this. It's a very common contact form that you might have on a website, often done badly, not in this case, but often done badly. It's just a form slapped on the contact form page, no context around it, no reason why anyone should use it. And actually, and this is quite interesting, it doesn't say what's going to happen when I do fill out the form. So I'd often advocate, try and have a purpose for a form. And this is a simple callback request, and that is the purpose. You know, you can contact Eclipse using their phone number. You can email them on the link provided in there. You can't see it in this screenshot, but it would be above the fold here or above the page. The whole point of the callback form is a lot of people they've got a job that they need doing. They're researching into something. In this case, they may be looking into CCTV, or they're looking at the new vape sensor alarm. And so what they want to do is they find a company they like, and they want to just leave their details and have the job done, and maybe pass that task over to the company to contact them back. So that's the purpose of a callback form. So what you need to do is just some basic fields. Obviously, you need to know their name. Potentially email is quite useful in case you can't phone them back. Phone number, definitely, and a message of some sort. And then key is, what are they interested in? You know, just to give you a little bit of a heads up. So when you're calling them back, you say, I hear you're interested in the new vape sensor. You know, maybe I can talk you through some of the options or find out how you might use it in your school or your business. And then, most importantly, a submit button, but don't leave it as default. A lot of people, you see, it just says submit down the bottom or send. I often like to have a button that actually says what it's going to do. So in this case, it says request callback. And then you'll see beneath this, it says your information will be used to make contact with you. So there's a little bit of detail about how that data is going to be used, which you need to have from a GDPR perspective. So this is quite a simple form. You could possibly adjust this a little bit by, rather than having your message, you could give people an example of some of the information that you'd like them to provide. You can either do that with a little bit of text above it, or you can have what's called or what's known as a placeholder text, which is something that is shown within the form, and that's the same in this case. So anyway, that's a simple callback request, quite common on a lot of websites, but often done badly, where there's no context around it, and they're not really saying what's going to happen after you fill that in. Next on the list is an email subscribe form. So this is another client, Fen. Down the bottom in their footer, they've got a little subscribe form. There's different ways to do these subscribe forms. If you're using something like MailChimp or Campaign Monitor, they can often supply you with the HTML code that you need to just embed onto the site. But in this case, what we wanted to do is just have a form built into the website that then connects with MailChimp in this case, and then sends the data into MailChimp. And so we're just using the same form system that we're using throughout the site in different places. So it just keeps things, it's more straightforward rather than having to customize a MailChimp form. So in this case, if you look down the bottom in the footer, we've got receive priority discounts, sign up to be the first to know about latest news, events and offers and that sort of stuff. So we're setting the scene. Why are you doing this? Why are you filling out the form? And then some basic details, name, email, and then the button which says what it does, subscribe. Quite simple. You see this all the time. Getting slightly more complex now. This is on website Cotswold Sleeps. So this is a booking form. Now, Cotswold Sleeps is like an agency for different properties in and around the Cotswolds area. And so they do actually have a dedicated booking system now. But if you want a more general inquiry, like you were just interested in going on holiday between two dates for a certain number of maybe adults and children, but you weren't fussed about the property and you want to let Cotswold Sleeps do the work for you, then you can fill in this form. So very simple form. Again, name, email, basic details. There's a little drop down there where you can select a specific property, or you can just say any property. You've got stay from and leave on dates. If you click on those, then up pop a little box, a little date picker, which I'll show you an example of this later as we dive into a few more specific examples. More drop downs for name, number of adults, and so on, and a message. Now, I say you could probably enhance this form by rather than just putting the prompt message. Maybe you want to put in there what we'd like people to fill out. So maybe tell us a little bit about your holiday, what you're hoping to achieve, where you're hoping to go, anything you want to do, and we'll see if we can make that happen for you. And again, the button send, booking inquiry, trying to be quite specific about what it's going to do. Event sign up. This is on our site. So if we're running events, we might use a separate event system like Eventbrite. But if we wanted to manage that event ourselves, we can have a simple form on here just to collect some basic details. Again, usual name, email, phone number. And in this case, maybe you want to collect the company's name and website address because that's going to be relevant to the event that we're running. Again, with this one, it wasn't actually signing up for a particular event. It was just registering interest. And then once we had people's interest, once we had more details on the event, we could then send that out. So forms can be really useful for collecting details in advance of something that you're going to do. It might be a product launch. So if your product isn't quite ready yet, but you want to start the marketing, which is often a good idea, you can build that interest, then you might want to use a form on the product page before they can buy it, so people can pop their email in and let you know that they're interested in knowing when it's ready. And that's a really good way of just building that audience over time, maybe talking about how you're developing the product, giving them some little snippets, some little videos, some little fun things along the way. And then once it's ready, you've got this email list that you can send out to of people who are at least interested. And on another client site here, Selmac, they've got a request to quote form. This is actually a very, I was going to say popular form on the site, but it's really heavily used on the site. It's available on every single big machine product that they do. And basically all inquiries are driven to these request to quote forms. Basically, people come in from multiple different channels. They land on the product page. There's a little button at the top. Click on that and it brings them down to this footer. And the important thing about this is actually a generic form, which is used. It's the same form used on all of the products, but we customize the message with the bits of information that we want to put in there. And it's based on the product that they're on. So you can see here, please send me a quote or call me to discuss the Morgan Rushworth compact fiber laser. So we've populated that bit of information based on the page that we're already on. Then they have the basic details on there. There's a postcode as well, and including on this, there's a postcode lookup. So they can actually start typing in their postcode, and then if their company name is shown on there, they can click on that, and that will pre-fill some of the details for them. Also, how did you hear about us? From my perspective, when you're getting a lead through, which is effectively what this is, it's a lead, someone is interested in buying this particular machine. I, as a marketing person, want to know how they heard about us. How did they eventually get through to this particular form? That's really useful because then we can see which of our marketing efforts are working. I think this is the last one, and I'm going to take you through an example of how we create this as well. This is the multi-step quote form. This is on Binnit. And this is quite nice. Actually, we redeveloped this site based on the site they already had, and they did have this quote, multi-step quote in place, and which was a sort of a custom build quote system that they had already made for them. We recreated this in Ninja Forms, which is how I'm going to show you an example of that. And what I love about this is it just takes you through a few questions and just gives you a basic estimate of what it could cost to work with Binnit. Now, what Binnit do is they take away your rubbish and waste. And what they then try and do is help you recycle as much of that as possible. And then once you build a relationship with them, they will help go into your whole sort of waste chain and help you improve and basically waste less over time. So this is quite a nice, simple process, and I'll show you a bit more about how this works later.
Oh, there's one last one. I forgot about this. This is on security group. And this is actually using a very similar process to Binit. It's multi-step and it's about selecting products. So in here, they've got a lot of alarm-based products. And you just go through a few questions on a home or a business. How many rooms do I have? Do I want the smart connection kit, which allows it to be effectively connect to the cloud so you can control it remotely, and various other options. You go through a few of these and then it comes up with a product recommendation. And then from that, you can fill out your details as well. What I like about it is it's quite passive. So the client is able just to go through and just get a rough idea about the price before contacting security group. And security group doesn't know any of this information until, and this is the important bit, if that visitor wants to take it further, they can fill out a form, and then all of the answers they've provided will be sent through to security group. So they're really ahead of the game when it comes to filling out that lead form and understanding what the client wants. So just before I go through the walkthrough, I thought I'd mention there's some different plugins that you can use for creating forms. And I'm going to obviously focus on WordPress. That's our specialism. So that's the area we're going to look at. And there's lots of different form systems. I've just mentioned a few here, but there are lots more. We used to use Contact Form 7 a lot. It's a very simple form creator. And in fact, we liked it because it was very simple and easy to copy and paste forms between sites. I'd say it's very good for technical people because you're building forms in a very technical way. It's not so WYSIWYG, so you can't just drag and drop form controls in. It was much more about a text-based system, but that worked really well. The problem with Contact Form 7 is if you want to start to do more advanced things, it becomes more complicated. So for that, where you're looking at doing more complicated form controls like date pickers, or multi-step where you're having different forms over multiple pages, or integration with different services like MailChimp or HubSpot, then you need to sort of up your game a little bit and move to one of these bigger platforms. So there's a couple here that I have used all of these in different capacities, but we've settled on Ninja Forms. Gravity Forms is really good. And we have used it on a couple of client sites that we've taken over. So we use it on those. And I kind of like it, but I don't think it gives us as much flexibility as Ninja Forms does. WP Forms is the same, although I've used that based on other client sites. We've just not used it ourselves. And like with a lot of WordPress plugins, once you find ones you're comfortable with, you tend to settle on that. One of the reasons I like Ninja Forms is it's got lots of extensions, which I'll show you in a second. And you're also able to, you can go in and sort of customize it in the code as well. So you can actually, if we need to, we can dive into the PHP code and customize the information being sent and received from Ninja Forms. Luckily, we don't need to do that too much. So on with the walkthrough, I'm going to give you an overview of Ninja Forms, and then we're going to dive into building some example forms so you can see how all that works. So this is Ninja Forms. This is their website. Lovely, fun little logo. But apart from that, it's actually a free plugin that you can get through the WordPress repository, and it can do quite a lot out of the box. It can do most of the forms I've mentioned in the little preamble. You can do that in Ninja Forms without having to pay anything. And it's a nice, simple interface where you can drag and drop stuff together. It's when you start to want to do a little bit more, like take payments, or you want to have multi-step, or you want to adjust the layout slightly, or you want to create a PDF export, that's when you're going to want to start, you need to start paying them for those add-ons. And I think it's worth it, because at that point, you are starting to do a job, you're starting to earn money, so it becomes worth it. I think actually you can take PayPal payments without having to pay. But if you want to take regular credit card payments through the Stripe processing system, which I'll show you how that works in a minute, then you're going to need to pay for that. So let's have a look through the add-ons. There's lots of different ones here. I'll just touch on some of the key ones that we use. So conditional logic, really super useful. That allows you to turn different form elements on or off, or set variables or values within those form elements. So that's that can become incredibly useful. In fact, I'm using that with one client to build like a bit of a wizard self-diagnostic system, so people can click through, I've got this problem, this problem, this problem with my machine, and then based on those answers, it will then give you an idea of how to fix that. So conditional logic's really useful if you've got different things that people can do and you want then a different outcome. Layouts and styles, I'll show you that one, but it shows you how you can basically lay your forms out a little bit nicer. Date pickers, multi-step, these are the key ones I use. Save progress, I haven't actually used that, but that could be really useful if you are doing, say, job applications that are quite long. You might want to have a lot of information that people need to come back to over a series of days. You want save progress to keep that form stored, because there's nothing more frustrating is filling out a long form and then you have to walk away, make yourself a cup of tea while you think about some things on the form, and it times out after 20 minutes and you've lost all your data. So if you've got anything like that, save progress is useful. File upload is quite common to use that actually if you want to, certainly for a job application, you might want people to upload certain documents. PDF form submissions is quite good actually. I've used that with a client where we needed to generate a document that they could send in, and the easiest way of making the document is they just tick some boxes on the form and then that generates a PDF, albeit quite a simple PDF, but it generates a PDF and then emails that to them. This is core Zapier. If you haven't used Zapier before, maybe actually this would be a good topic to talk through, but Zapier is a way of integrating between one system and another using multiple steps. So it's like it's an automation system basically, where you can pass data from an input, pass it through different systems, which could be MailChimp, it could be Basecamp if you're using that project management tool, or a form, and you can get it to, you can tweak the data and change it and do lots of interesting things. Zapier can do all that for you. It's quite a cool automation system. Well, Ninja Forms can integrate with that. So Ninja Forms could actually be the place where you put all that data in to begin with. We've got payment options and then integration with various different email programs. MailPoet's the one we're using. Hopefully we're going to do a webinar on that, but that's a key one you could integrate with, and so on. There's lots of things here. HubSpot, Insightly, actually, we've got a client who uses Insightly and HubSpot. So it's one of the reasons I like Ninja Form. It just integrates with lots of different services, which makes our life a lot easier. Okay, let's have a look at Ninja Forms itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our test site. So this is a silly little test site we can use just to play around with different things on here. I'm just going to go straight into the dashboard and into Ninja Forms. So where do we want to start here? Let's just have a look at the template. So this is the main, if you click on Ninja Forms, this is what you're going to see once it's installed. If I click Add New, we've got some examples here of different types of forms that you can create. So a blank one where you just start adding your own fields, maybe collecting feedback from people, event registration. You know, we've got it all here, and it's a good way to start. Certainly if you're exploring it and getting used to it, I'd start with a template. Now, when you do start with Ninja Forms, you start with an initial template, which is this Contact Me one, which I'm going to dive into and show you how that works in a minute. But let's say you had Contact Me. If you were to fill that out, then all your submissions are going to, well, you've got actually a choice of what happens to them. They can either go into another system via an integration, they can go via an email, which is default, but also you get to store them on the system as well. And that's one of the reasons actually I like Ninja Forms, and the other ones do it as well, is we can store that form data directly on the website, which is great. Let's say, for example, maybe an email got lost in transit or got flagged into spam. Sometimes that happens. You can always dive into submissions. Let me select the contact form here. And you can see all of the submissions that have been sent through that form. So I can see my test one here. Obviously very important. I must get back to Ben. He's got some important business to discuss. You can also, if you, like us, you're generating lots of forms, you might want to use them between different sites. You can export and import those forms, very handy. And actually I use that particular system to set up our demo sites here. but it's really useful if you've got a particularly complicated form. It brings all of that logic over, everything, all of the plugins and integrations that you've got, whether it's conditional logic, layout, PDF generation, all of that is wrapped up into the export. So that works super well. Let's dive into the settings. These are the settings as default in Ninja Form. It's very American. So what I like to do is just change the date format. We want that day, month, year, because that's the proper way of doing it. And also we want our currency to be in British pounds, sterling. Probably doesn't affect 90% of the forms you're going to create, but I like to get that set up correctly. Walking down here in the settings, we've got reCAPTCHA, which is a way, you've probably seen this on websites where you have to select how many fire hydrants you can see, or pick the cars or motorcycles. I'll just show you an example of that. And it's all to detect that you're not a robot, because one of the biggest problems with the internet is spam, and you get spam on the web where it's trying to constantly fill out forms to either extract data or spam you. So using reCAPTCHA will allow this to stand in the way of that. If it detects that you're a robot, then it's not going to let that form get filled out. Actually, I have found that Ninja Form tends to be pretty good at blocking that. I've not tended to get many form fills coming through that are spammy with this, compared to other forms I've used, form generators I've used like Contact Form 7. But if you are worried about it, or you're getting a lot of spam, you can sign up for a Google reCAPTCHA account, which is free, and then you can put your details in here, and then that will help Ninja Forms block that data before it even gets to you. There's a few other settings here. One of the things I like to turn on, but probably isn't useful for most people, is developer mode, because it just gives some additional options that I like to fill out. So I'm going to do that one now. There's some other things in here, default styles. They call them opinionated styles. You can have them either light or dark, or if you're going to customize it yourself with a lot of CSS, which is what we tend to do, we might set it to none. But for now, for this example, I'll leave that to light. And finally, I've got the Stripe add-on installed. So I've actually added our test keys here, which I'll use to show you later. So let's save those settings and move on to a few examples. So the first example I'm going to show is the Eclipse one. Let's go for kind of a standard contact form. So if you want to contact Eclipse, you've got some basic details if you need help right now. Otherwise, if you want to discuss it a little further, you want to request a callback, click on this button. It's going to take us down to this form. Now, what we've done on this form is we're kind of getting rid of everything else because we want people to focus on this form. So we've got some basic details. You've already had a look through this. Let's have a look at how we might create that in Ninja Forms. So what I'm going to do, let's go back to our example site here, go into Ninja Forms, and I'm going to open the default contact form, which is here. So you wouldn't get anything else. You just have this contact me one here. Click on that, and let's just have a quick look around here. So it's a default, very simple form at the moment. We've got name, email, message. If I can click on each one of these, I can change its name. I can set whether it's required or not. So it won't, so it's going to validate that form and make sure I filled it out. I can, if I need a certain amount of characters in there, I can say, well, I want the name to be over a certain length, and I can restrict that. I don't tend to use that much. You can also change a few of the basic details here. So I can put a default value in there if I wanted. That might be appropriate for some, not in this case. Maybe I wanted to add an extra description. So type your full name. And that's going to put a little description above it. If I just save that, then we can see it's going to say type your full name here. So, you know, if you need to provide a little extra direction for that particular field, you can add some more detail in there. So let's edit the fields. I'm going to add a phone number here because it's a callback form. So let's go and add that in. We use the big plus down on the bottom right, click on that, and we get some options. Now, by default, the cursor is up in filter, so I can actually just start typing phone. And we've got a specific phone number field, and I can just drag and drop that into place. But there are lots of other fields on here. We've got date, time, we've got checkbox list, radio buttons, multiple selects, address fields, lots of stuff in there. There's a few in here that you're not going to get that are not default, because I've added some extra options in here, but you get quite a lot here. It's even got some extras that you can buy, the file upload and save, if you've got those add-ons as well. One thing I've found with a lot of these plugins is they're always on the upsell. So they'll always find little ways to make you buy what you want. But hey, if they're able to help you save time or make money, it's absolutely worth it. So we've added phone in there. What else do we want to do? Oh, let's make that required because it's really important. So if I click on this, I'm going to make that a required field. Tick that box. Brilliant. Something else we're going to do is, because I think that's everything we need on here, is I'm going to actually change this button to send call back request. Okay, done. Brilliant. Let's have a look at that. Let's go publish. And we go to our testing site. I'm going to go to the contact page. Here's our form. So we can see where the description comes out, email, phone. These are all required. So they've got a star next to them, and we can see the little prompt here. It's great. And we can actually see it's a live validation. We don't need to submit the form. It's live as we go through. So go back to this. There's a few other things I want to do. What if I go to the next tab at the top, email and actions? We've got lots of different things that will happen after the form has been filled out. So by default, it's going to record the submission. So it's going to store it in the database. It's going to send an email confirmation to the person who's filled out the form. It's going to send an email notification to the admin address, the main admin address for the website. And it's also going to display a success message. Now, in this case, I don't want to send an email confirmation. So I'm going to turn that off. But if I did want that on, I can set the options for it here. So I can set who it goes to. Well, obviously, we want to pick up the email field and send it to that person. We can set a subject, and then we can even set in here what the email message is. So if I did want an email confirmation, I can go, thanks for requesting a callback. And you can use mail merge fields like the name. So I could put in their name here and pop that in. Just remove that for the moment. So thanks for getting in touch. We'll give you a call back within the next 48 hours. And you can, maybe say, while you're waiting, have a look at this page or find out some more information about this product. But I don't want that. We want to set the success message. It's rather dry at the moment. It says form submitted successfully. I think all we want to put in there is thank you. We'll be in touch. Just some basic details. Obviously, what I would say is when people are filling out a form, it's good to tell them what's going to happen next. So if you can have a message like, we'll get back to you in 24 hours or in 2 working days, add that in. It's really nice to know what's going to happen next. So that's done. Oh, while I'm in there, what we can do in record submission, and this is really important from a GDPR perspective, is we can set submissions to expire. I don't need to or want to keep this data forever. So what I can do is just set them to expire after 30 days. 30 days, for example, which means every submission is going to be stored, but after 30 days, it's going to start clearing out those older ones, which is nice because it means I don't need to worry about clearing them out myself. So that's often a really useful thing to set. Typically, I do set it to 90, and I just do that by default and just let clients know that if they want, we can keep them for longer. But it just means that you're not worrying about that extra data. Let's go back to the form, just have a look see what it looks like. So the form actually has this little title to it. It's called Contact Me. I don't want the title on there. I want the form to be as simple as possible. So going back to the form builder, I can go into advanced, display settings, and here's where the title is. So I'll call it Contact Me, that's fine, but I want to not display the form title. So let's turn that off. I think that's all the options I want. For now, let's publish. And refresh the form. We can see the title's gone. We probably wouldn't see many of the other changes there. you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change how the form looks a little bit and use what is a bit more of a modern layout. So let's go back to the form builder. And what I'm going to do is go back to my form fields. I'm going to take out this description. And what we'll do, I'll just show you with one as an example. I'm going to put in a placeholder which says your name. So that means that will appear in the field. And then I'm going to disable the label. So label position, which currently says name, I'm going to say hidden. And we'll click done, publish, and we look at our form. Now we don't have the little label above, although it's still there for accessibility reasons, the label is still there, but it says your name within the field. And that's quite nice because now you can basically compress the form vertically a little bit. We can make it a bit neater, which is really useful for small forms. And we can just then overtype our name within that field and the placeholder disappears. Placeholders are really useful for messages as well if you want to give people an example of what they type in there. Okay, so that's our sort of typical callback form or contact form. By default, Ninja form will have the contact me one in there, and you can adapt that. And it doesn't take much to really make it into a callback request. So let's move on to another example. And this is the booking form. So the booking form, I'm going to take as an example from Cotswold Sleeps. So let's show you what that looks like. So here's the Cotswold Sleeps website. She does actually have a dedicated search on here from SuperControl, but there is also the generic contact as well. So it's this little form. And as I mentioned, you've got these little date options. Now that's built into Ninja Form, so you can have that one for free. But they do have an add-on which allows you to do more complicated date spans. So it's particularly useful if you've got accommodation booking. You can actually have a proper date span from this date to this date, and it shows it in that one calendar, which is very useful. Here's an example of the drop-downs and then the multiple properties. So let's build that one or have a look at building that one in our test site. So I'm going to go through to booking. And we've got this very nice Yorkshire Tours booking website here. I've taken the form from Cotswold Sleeps and adapted it slightly, and we're going to go through how we might customize it. So you can see it's pretty much the same, although it's not laid out in the same way. And actually, it's quite a long form. There's a lot of detail here. And what I'm finding is that the form fields are starting to run into each other. So visually, it becomes very difficult to see where I need to fill things out. Whereas you see in this one, we've got a bit more of a layout. It compresses the form up a little bit, makes it look more interesting and easier to fill out. So let's try and adapt our form to look the same as that. So if we just click the X to come back out of Ninja into the main WordPress admin, and I'm going to go into bookings. So first of all, let's change the layout a little bit. Now for this, you do need the styles and layouts add-on. But what that allows you to do once you've got it is you can just drag things around. So I can drag to the side and it splits. And so we can have a nice 50-50. And I want to do the same with this one as well. Stay from and leave on. Let's move out to the side. And then number of adults, number of children. You can easily break them out again or move them around. And that's actually made then 3 different columns. Let's delete that column and switch it around. So you can really play around with the columns. And I think that's what makes the form a lot more interesting to fill out. So there's that bit. That's good. That looks a little better. Let's just see how that looks. I'm going to publish that, show you on the site. And that instantly looks a lot better. It looks a lot more inviting to fill out. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to customize, just show the email confirmation here. So we've got this. Now this shows you the email confirmation that we looked at earlier, but it shows with a lot of customization in here. We can actually see it almost mail merging a lot of the form data together. So we've got custom message in there. Thanks for requesting booking availability. It's a confirmation of the details that they've put in. But rather than just dropping all of the data in one big tabular form, we can actually split it out and format it how we like. So we've got a name, and that will populate their name in here. It'll populate the property they're interested in from the drop down, the dates to and from, and that's nice because we can keep those together, and then who's included. And you can do each one of those. Let me just delete this and add it again. By just clicking this option here, it looks like a little table. Click on that, and then we can select the field that we want to add. And it populates that in there. And that's super useful. I mean, that's where the power of it really comes into its own. So click done. I think let's have a look. What I'd like to do actually is maybe take a booking fee. So it doesn't quite work for this particular instance, but let's say that we wanted to, let's say we're a restaurant and you want to just take a little deposit when someone's booking, then you can do that. Let's add an action in here. So if I click on the plus, we've got lots of different actions that we can add on. The ones that are grayed out are the ones where you need add-ons. But I've already got the Stripe one in there, as you saw earlier. So I'm going to click on that, and that adds it as an action into our list. And now we can start to customize the action. Now, if you haven't pre-populated it with the sort of API key details that you saw already, then it's going to pop up a little box, and you can fill those details out. It goes without saying, or maybe I should say it, that you need a Stripe account. If you don't have an account with Stripe, which is a credit card processing system, then this isn't going to work. But we use Stripe for any e-commerce. It's a brilliant system, so I highly recommend it. So we've got this added. What I need to do, if we want to take a deposit, we want a fixed amount, let's say of £25. So I can put that in there. But you could have it from a calculation or from another field. So you'll see in the next example how you can have a calculation that runs through your form. So you can actually have maybe a quote builder where you actually price up different elements, and then that calculates the price, and then you can take that in a credit card payment here. So it's like a build it yourself e-commerce system. But for this one, I want a fixed amount. Then we go into advanced. We might want to put in some basic details about where their customer email comes from. We could put in maybe some address details if that's relevant. We can put in what we want it to be actually called in Stripe. And most importantly for us, test mode. Oh, let me show you the shipping details. So if you need to pre-populate some of the shipping details, you can do that. And we need it in test mode. Once we're ready to go live, we can add the live API, Stripe API keys in, and then it's going to actually take payment. So that's all the options I need. There's a lot more you can actually put in here, including you can actually push an image over to Stripe to show you what you're buying. But I'm going to do that for now. Publish. And then if all works well, I'm just going to populate some basic details. So let's put in my work details here. I'm going to select the sunflower barn, and we're going to stay from today. Just for a nice short weekend. Let's just say Lou and I going away, and then we can tap in some extra details there if that's relevant, and then send booking inquiry. So what that's done, it's filled out the form, everything's valid, and then it kicks us over to this Stripe checkout page. Now, as I said, you can customize some of the details that comes through. I've kept it quite simple and just bought a bookings Stripe payment. £25. I can either use Apple Pay or I can fill out the details for a credit card. That is then going to send an email message through to you saying that they've paid. So it's super simple. It's no full e-commerce system, but it's actually a really good way just to simply take payment for things, which could be anything, a restaurant booking, a charity donation, or just deposit payments for projects. There's lots of different things you can do with this, and it's very straightforward. I will just show you something else. Let me just go back to this. I will just show you something else. If you want to just liven up the form a little bit, we could put we could add a divider in here, and then you could add some address details. Let me move the divider a little bit. So let's say we did need to collect address. We can just put a divider in, which just splits the form up a little bit, and then we can start collecting address details and postcode if we wanted. They call it zip. So because it's American, so you might need to change that a little bit. So there's lots of ways to customize it. Okay. Let's go and have a look at our last example, which is a bit more complicated. And that is based on this one from Binet. So lovely little site, and they've got this nice quote form, which I'm just going to show you how that works. And there's actually a couple of different steps to it. First thing here is to enter a postcode. So let's first put SN1 1DW. That's my postcode. That's a little initial form. All that form does is take the postcode and then push it to the get a quote page, and then actually add in the postcode at the top, which then pre-populates in the form. Very handy, and I'll show you how to do that. So that's pre-populated in. Now we can go to the next step. We select what type of business we are, like industrial, next step, employees, next step, and then gives us an estimation. So based on those two things, they just have a calculation to work out what that might be. Now, this is great, nice, quick system, and the visitor hasn't had to submit any personal details at all. But if they like that, and they actually do want to have a conversation, have a quote, then they can fill out the details here, and then that generates a lead, and it pre-populates it with all the information they need to know. So let's rebuild that, or a very simple version of that. Let's go and have a look at the quote system here. So this is it. This is basically the default way of showing a multi-step form. There's lots of details on here. I'll just briefly show them to you. This blank gray box at the top here is actually, it shows you how you are progressing. It's like a progress chart showing you how you're progressing through the form, particularly useful if it's very long. These, they call them breadcrumbs, where it says postcode, type, and size, but they'll actually show you the tab that you're on, which it'll make more sense when I come through to the form builder. And then this is the title of the particular tab. So you can see it looks very similar. And we've even got the built-in query string variable. So if I put in code equals SN1 1DW, we can see that gets pre-filled in here. So if you've got a form and you want to submit a lot of data from an email that you sent out, or maybe something, you know, you're connecting multiple forms together or multiple systems together, using these little query string variables is incredibly useful. You've got to bear in mind, though, that that query string is going to get stored somewhere. It's going to get stored on the server. So there's a potential for privacy data leakage. So you don't want to put anything up there that's too private, because it will get stored in the server logs. Okay, let's go through to the form builder. I'm going to close this one and go back through to Ninja Forms. And then we want to go through to quote. So this one, because it's a bit more advanced, there's a lot less going on here, but let me walk you through it and it will make sense. First to note, we've got multiple steps. You can see them in the bottom here. First, we want to collect the postcode, then the type of business, size of business, and then we'll get through to the actual quote calculation and form. Let's go back to the beginning. You can actually navigate through these little arrows as well. Now, if you actually wanted to make those sections, when you first create your multi-step form, it's not going to have multiple steps to it. It's going to have a single step, and then what you'll see is a little plus box here. So you can actually click on that, and it's going to create you a new part, and you can then just drag in fields that you want into that area. But I don't want that one, so I'm going to remove it. Go back to postcode. So what do I want to do on this one? First, let's explain the query string code. So you can actually see it in here. This is a default feature of Ninja Forms, where you can pick up information that you see in the query string by putting in a little bit of code. So if I go to display here, we can set the default value to be query string, and then the query string is code, and that matches up to this. This is the query string up here. And we start the query string with a question mark, and then we put code and then equals. Fairly straightforward, really, in terms of how that works. And just by adding that into the query string on the main website, and then you add this bit into the default value, it brings it through. It's very straightforward, and you can bring any data through that way. But as I said, bear in mind that that data does get stored in the server log. So don't put any private information in that if you can avoid it. So that's really quite useful in that particular area. Then you've got this little HTML box here. Now, this allows me to add arbitrary HTML, which could be text, images, graphics, whatever I want can be dumped up in this area here. You can just type it in. So it's really useful if you want instructional information or titles, or we can go into the HTML mode where I can actually copy and paste in my own HTML in there. And I love this. For me, I love it because I can dive in and make that form exactly how I want it to be. So it works really well. So for something like the bin it form, we can actually make that quite complicated in terms of how it works, what it can do. So what we'll do is we'll show you adding a new form and how you might move it between the different sections. So if I go to the plus in the bottom right again, let's just add a single checkbox. If I just click on that, it adds it straight into our form. But I don't want it on this page. So what I'm going to do is just click on it, hold, and you see when you do that, you can actually move it to these different areas. So I could move its layout, or I can hold over the blue arrow here, and it's going to drop it into the next section. So if I go into type, I can actually see the checkbox has been moved, and I can drop it back. Now, if you've got a long form and you need to move it to the end, then you're going to need to keep moving to the next one, dropping it in, and you're going to need to keep doing that. It's a bit of a pain. There's no way I've found that you can move easily between them. That's the only way of doing it. So the best way I've found is actually to try and build up the form as you go. And when you want to add fields, go to the part that you want to add the field on and add it there. But we don't want this one, so I'm going to delete that. Oh, you will notice there's another option up here. If I hover over the cog, you've got some different options. You can delete it. And bear in mind, when I click that, it's going to delete it immediately. So it doesn't, while it doesn't actually delete it, I've got to wait until I hit publish, and then it's actually deleted from the form. If I hit that and I've got some complicated setup in that particular field, I'm going to need to add that field again. So I'm slightly wary about using that delete, that I'll tend to just make sure I've published the form, saved it. So if I do accidentally delete anything, I can just refresh the page and it's going to come back. Or we've got clone, so I can duplicate that and make a new field. Okay, so what other options do I want to do to this? We want to dive into the calculation. How do we actually make it calculate at the end? So what I'm going to do is, let's just walk through our current form. If I go next step, I can pick retail. Next step, that many employees, 11 to 25. Next step, and we get to the final form. But it's missing something. It's missing our estimated price. So let's add that in. First things first is we go through these type options. Now, these are multi-select images. So it allows us to actually add in images as the options that you click on. That can be really useful in this case where we actually do want to show the different businesses and we want something more interesting. But we don't need to have that. We could just have a simple drop down or tick box. But in each one of these, each type, not only have I got a label for it, so that's what I can see, we've got a value that can be set for it, but we've also got a calculation value. So these numbers aren't the ones that Binet used. This is a very simplistic version of it. So in the count value, I put in 5, 10, 10, and 10. In fact, let's make light industrial 15 because it's obviously going to cost more because it's bigger. And we've got the same options under size, same values pre-populated in there. So what we need to do now is create a calculation that, depending on the options I click, it's going to add those up. So for that, we go into advanced, click on advanced in the top and calculations. And in here, I want to add a new variable called price. And we want to add those, calculate those together. So we want to take, first of all, type plus size, and that's going to create our calculation. Click done. Now let's go back to the form, back to details, and we're going to add that price calculation into our HTML here. So I'm just going to click on here, select the fields, go to the calculations option, and then price, which is now newly created. And then I'm just going to copy it down into here. So click done, publish, and let's have a look at that. I refresh the form. It's going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to select office and then 1 to 10 employees. And it's giving us a price. And if I want to change that, I can go back and select more employees and the price has gone up. So if you've got simple calculations where it's like X plus this or, X times Y, this is a really useful way of just giving people an estimate, a cost to work things out. But let's make this a little bit more complicated. What we're going to do is, let's say that if we had a light industrial business, then we're not able to provide cost for when they've got more than 250 employees. So that's a condition. We need to put some logic in place to do that. So we go back to the form builder, we go through to advanced, and we've got conditional logic. So in conditional logic, it's sort of set out a basic template for me. We need to select when type has selected light industrial. So when light industrial is selected for type, then do this. And I want size. Sorry, not size. I want size here because that's the part. That's that, like you can hide the whole multi-step part, which is quite useful. And I want to hide option 250 employees. So when that light industrial has been selected, hide the 250 plus employees option. But, and this is important, you've also got to put the opposite condition. When that condition is not met, we want to show the option. And then we hit done and publish. And then we go back to our form. I'm going to refresh it. We must refresh it if we've made changes. We click next step. First of all, I'm going to click office. Next, and that works. In fact, we didn't even need to go through to the calculation phase. We could see if I click light industrial, we can see that a last option has disappeared. So that's really useful if you want to hide and show different fields, and we can do exactly the same for the whole part sections as well. So if the size didn't matter for light industrial, I could get rid of this whole part, this whole section. They select light industrial, it's going to take us straight to the end step. So that's really, really useful. It's going to do a few final things to tidy up this form. There's a lot going on here, which I don't need. I certainly don't need the breadcrumbs. I don't need the progress bar, and I don't need the title. So let's go into the form builder again. And we want to go into, first of all, multi-part here, and then take off breadcrumbs, progress bar, and part titles. Hit done. I like a nice simple form. I don't like lots of stuff there. It's too much. I don't want to confuse people. I want them to focus on filling out the form. And let's click done. Publish that. Refresh. And now we've got a nice simple form that we can click through. And I know this is quite simplistic in look, but it's a really good base for having a very simple focus quote system. And I think certainly for Binet, they've got that one area, that one form where wherever people come in from, they focus them onto that form, and they've got a really quick way about finding out whether the price is right and they can work with Binet. That's it. That's all I'm going to share. It's a nice quick run through about the different ways that we can use forms on our website, or particularly Ninja Forms. It's a really good system to create a wide variety of forms. And, you know, we've done lots of different types of forms, and it's just incredibly expansive in what you can do, a bit like WordPress itself, actually.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club. You can learn more, find great episodes, and join at ratherinventive.com/club. That's ratherinventive.com/club. Bye for now.